Okay. Hi, my name is Solip, and this is Games Now. Games Now is an open lecture series on game development run by Aalto University. During this COVID-19 virus pandemic, the Games Now will be safely offered in social distancing mode here in our Twitch channel. Our main host, Anna-Kaisa Kultima, is currently on her parental leave, and she will come back in next spring. Anyone can join Games Now online and leave comments and questions on our chat. The lecture video will also be later shared on our YouTube channel. If you want to take full advantage of what we offer, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also find more information about our upcoming lectures in our official website at gamesnow.aalto.fi. So for today, when we talk about the global video game market in the 21st century, we cannot miss the opportunity to talk about the video game market in China. So what is it like to publish video games to the Chinese market? To answer this question, we invited Mikael Leinonen, the CEO and co-founder of mobile game publisher MyGamez. Mikael has handled mobile business development with China for over 10 years, being one of the best knowledgeable people in Finland about the Chinese video game market. Okay, and without further ado, Mikael, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Solip, and very nice to be with everyone here today. So sorry I can't see you, but I will try to imagine you. So I'm really honored to be part of this program and talk to you about my favorite subject, Chinese game market. China has been on the news lately, mostly regarding to the Chinese-US trade war. So I'm happy to be able to bring China up in a slightly different context. My experience is mainly on the mobile games industry, but I think the general part of my presentation will be applicable to PC and console as well. But for more specific questions, I might not be able to answer all the questions for outside of mobile industry. All right, so my agenda for today with you is to first give you a bit of introduction of my background and what MyGamez is doing, and then go to the overview of Chinese market, and then some of the characteristics of Chinese mobile game market, and then we go into the regulations and market access, and finally we'll have some time for Q&A. So grab your Starbucks and let's get started. So I first went to China in 2003. It was right before SARS outbreak, so I was there to witness that, and I was there attending an exchange study program in Shanghai University, studying Mandarin Chinese for 6 months. That was part of my studies in Satakunta University, Applied Sciences. I was studying software development as my major. I didn't really have much interest on a software development, to be honest. I mainly picked that university because they offered access to the exchange program in China. So I was really looking forward to go there. And I didn't, at that time, internet wasn't like that commonplace yet. At least I didn't do much of background checks on China. So I went there with a very thin knowledge of what the country actually is. One of my first memories from the Shanghai University is one of our professors in the beginning of a geography introductory class. She, with her broken English, she first announced that the Chinese map is like a cock, and it took us a few moments until she finally showed us the map to realize that she was referring to rooster kind of cock. But yeah, China was amazing experience for me right from the get-go. I totally fell in love with it. So I spent that 6 months mainly in Shanghai, then traveling around a little bit. And when I went back to Finland, after that 6 months, I had just one thought: how to get back as soon as possible. And I did get really lucky then. I got job, actually a trainee position first in Hong Kong for FinPro, which is a semi-governmental organization. Nowadays it's part of the Business Finland. So I went there to do my final thesis about 3D technologies 3G technologies in China. And then after that, they hired me to be an analyst on their ICT team. I spent a couple of years in Hong Kong, and then got transferred to inland into the FinPro Guangzhou office, where I stayed another 2 years helping Finnish ICT companies to do business in China. And from there, I moved to Beijing, where I started my first own business as a consulting firm. I was helping European customers who had anything to sell to the Chinese mobile phone manufacturers. So that was in 2008. I went to Beijing just before the Olympic Games. I saw the final rush of them building the city, rebuilding the city for the Olympic Games, all these amazing new buildings popping up here and there. That was a really busy year in Beijing. And of course, then the hugely successful Olympic Games. So that time, Nokia was still at their peak years, but the iPhone and Android had already come out, and Chinese mobile phone manufacturers were starting to grow, and they were building affordable Android devices. You had companies like Huawei, CTE, Lenovo, and many others at that time learning how to build Android smartphones, and I help my customers to do business with them, and I did that until 2013, when I finally founded MyGamez together with my Chinese co-founder. So my China background, living in China. It felt at that time that I was living in all the major cities, the 4 biggest cities, and it felt like I've been all around China. But if you look at the map, there's quite a lot of territory I actually didn't cover. It is a huge country. It's even when you are there, it's really difficult to understand the scale of it. The huge number of their population. There are over 160 cities with population over 1 million, and still today, over 500 million people are living in rural conditions. The urbanization rate is very fast, so more and more people are moving into cities. And the economy is growing, so the middle class is also really fast growing. There's currently over 700 million people in the middle class. The wealth in China is pretty much focused on the eastern coastline there. So coming down from the Korea next to the Korean Peninsula, Beijing, Tianjin, that area is one massive economic center. Then you have the Shanghai area, the Yangtze River Delta, where you have several major hubs. And then going down, there's Fuzhou, Xiamen, big port cities, and then Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou in the south. And now there is the latest sort of development is the new special economic zone that China is developing in the southern islands of Hainan. That for long used to be a sort of touristic destination only, but now it's becoming a tax-free special economic zone that China is really putting a massive development efforts there. Then if you move into the inland parts, you have big cities like Wuhan, Chengzhou, etc. And then further west, Chengdu, Chongqing, massive metropolis, where the government has really been now pushing the development in these inland areas. But the further west you go, the kind of the territory changes to the more mountainous, and there's different types of and it's more rural and different industries, and it's kind of gets the poorer to the more west you go. My China experience still started from not from thinking of the economy of it, but from the culture side. So I fell in love first with the culture, like the food, all the tea, the history of it, and the language, and it's really diverse how China is. There are so many different minorities, local languages, sort of local cultures in terms of food and other activities. So China is really a treasure trove for anyone who wants to enjoy like a wide range of experiences there. And that also reflects to its sort of gaming market, that you really have is one China, but you will have so many different segments of people from most rural parts to the mega cities like Shanghai and Beijing. And then different income levels, different education levels, and so on, and that's just really much more diverse than what you have here in the major Western markets. All right, then MyGamez is company that is essentially a service provider enabling Western mobile game publishers to access the Chinese market. We are targeting the leading publishers in the West and offering them a service that really helps them to tap their full growth in China. And we started this business in 2013 when we saw that the rise of the Chinese mobile game market was really starting to accelerate. It was already before that there was a lot of users, but not a lot of money. But then in 2013 there started to be already money in the market. And 2013, there was also already some really good games coming out of Finland. There was Angry Birds, and Supercell already had their first big hits. And we thought, like, wow, this is an opportunity that we really shouldn't skip to help the Finnish and other Western games to access the Chinese market. And at that time, it was really, really difficult to access the market. It still is. Different difficulties are a little bit different. But that time there was basically no good deals available for Western developers, and we wanted to change that. So that's how we started MyGamez with the vision that hey, we really want to make the China market access possible for any Western developer with a fair and transparent and secure way. And we really want to bridge the gap there. So we built the company from ground up to be a Finnish-Chinese operation, where we can provide a fully Western interface to our developer partners while still remaining 100% Chinese street smart operation locally. And I think we've done a good job on that. We are still the only mobile games publisher who is really Western Chinese combination in their DNA and really bridging the gap properly. And as of fast forward today, we have been focusing on the Android markets mainly, and achieved over 550 million downloads accumulately for our portfolio. We've been really lucky to get to work with some of the best developers in the mobile games field, like Playrix, Small Giant Games, Fingersoft, and many others. And we are now on the way to sort of try to provide the top Western developers with a completely new type of model that enables them to scale their games based on performance marketing in the Chinese market. So that's my background in a short, and that's where I'm coming from with this introduction to the market. And let's move to see how exactly China is. So we like to say that it is the biggest growth opportunity for global game companies. It's not for everyone, but for those companies who have the good product market fit, who have the resources to do China properly, China really is the biggest growth opportunity for them by far. The Chinese economy is massive. It's already in par with the US economy, and it has been growing with the amazing pace. The GDP used to be growing double-digit per annum. Now, for the past couple of years, it's been around 6% per year growth, and it still continues to grow. And it's amazingly resilient. All the financial crises that there has been in the recent history, China has weathered them really well. So the previous financial crisis, the government was able to really subsidize the domestic consumption with these massive infrastructure investments, and just keeps the economic growing. So it has And now with the COVID-19, China has been really fast to get back on the growth path. So it is the only major economy in the world that is expected to have some growth in their GDP this year, around 1%, but still growth, while all the other major economies are struggling with the negative growth. And China has several, many advantages in their economy. They have been the manufacturing powerhouse for the developed Western economies for a long time, but doing that, they have also managed to gradually level up their production. So from the low-level productions to the services industries and innovation, and now they have a really robust domestic consumption, services market, and tech development sector, and they are expected to keep growing. And they are already the number one mobile games market. Games market overall in the world. And in the next 25 years, they might be twice as large as an economy. So they will naturally also become twice as large as a gaming market. So definitely a place not to ignore. China is also a super advanced mobile-first economy, and it is no exaggeration to say that Chinese are using their phones for everything. And I'm sure like South Korea might still be ahead of China in some areas. But in terms of like wide adoption and the pace of the innovation, I think China is in its own league. There are many reasons for that, but to mention a few, Chinese people are very, very adaptive to new technologies. They are eager to try new stuff, and I think this is related to that their economy has been growing so fast for so many years or decades, and it has become a part of their culture to understand that the future expectations are great. They are, and they have seen how new technologies have brought big improvements into their life, and they have. The country itself has been able to leapfrog some of the older technologies. Like they pretty much skipped the whole PC era, like straight to the mobile, and then they have the economy of scale. They have a lot of resources. There are big companies and investors. Pumping in a lot of money into these innovative tech service companies, and they also have very ambitious people who want to grow, want to develop. So all those combined, you have now a country who is nearly 80% of the population are using mobile internet with smart devices, and they are using it for everything. So payments, like here in Finland, you start to see that sometimes in a supermarket POC, people are using their Apple Pay or other mobile pay. But in China, it has been paying everything everywhere with their mobile already for years. and it goes also to the mobile banking sector and loaning sector. E-commerce is massive. Alibaba is the biggest e-commerce platform, and nearly $1 trillion was last year was their total transaction volumes in China. That's how, and although they are biggest, it's still just one of the platforms. So Chinese are really buying everything online. Then the food delivery, ride hailing, social media, gaming, all the entertainment. Everything is mobile first. So people are watching videos on their phones instead of watching TV at home. Over 1 billion users for WeChat, which is the most popular social media super app owned by Tencent. Douyin, which is the part of ByteDance, who is the parent company of TikTok. So Douyin has the China version of TikTok. Basically has 500 million monthly active users. So the numbers are just mind-boggling. Influencer marketing with all these short video and video streaming platforms is already $15 billion US per year, and there are a lot of, the pace of development is just crazily fast. And for example, the e-commerce has now started using influencer marketing for in a really large scale as their preferred way to get people to buy stuff. So they have all these short video influencers and streamers who are now working for some of those e-commerce brands to promote their products, and that has in a very short, I think within 1 year, become just massive market. So it is really advanced market, and I think that's one of the misconceptions Westerners sometimes still have, that China would still be in the what it looked like in 70s, and somehow behind Western markets. But I think that couldn't be further from truth. So gaming is also really mobile first, and Chinese are also extremely gaming crazy people compared to Westerners. So the percentage of the time that they spend on gaming is much larger than Westerners. At the moment, China and US are, according to Yuzu's data, are already almost 50% of the global market, and this is all gaming combined. And then if you reflect this to China's economic growth and the urbanization rate and the growing middle class, you can understand that China's portion will grow much larger in the coming years. And since China on all the areas, they are growing faster than the global market, the time is on their side. And in a mobile game segment, some of the data is suggesting that China is already over 30% of the global mobile games market. So if you are able to get your game there and succeed there, that would really add to your competitive advantage in a global scale. Here's a graph of the mobile game market size growth over the past 5 years and projection to next year, this year and next year, and it's hitting 30 billion USD soon. The growth rate, the orange year-on-year growth, has come down from the crazy peak growth years, but it's still over 10%. And I think this graph is a little bit outdated. The COVID-19 caused a similar spike in China as it has in other parts of the world, and I think they are on the track. The growth over the past 2 years has mainly slowed down because of the new regulations that came into end of 2016. The government introduced bunch of new rules that significantly slowed down how publishers can introduce new games to the market. So without those regulations, the growth would probably have been much faster. I will go into details in the next section into what those regulations were. 600 million gamers on mobile, and nearly 80% of that. Sorry, I have a prop. This should be 86%. 86% is Android and 14% is iOS. Sorry for the typo there. The percentage of the two platforms' market share keeps changing depending on how well each of the iPhone model is selling in China. But over the past 5 years, the Chinese Android manufacturers have really been gaining market share super aggressively. Apple used to have about 30% market share, but now they have been losing to local Android brands like Huawei, Oppo, Vivo, Xiaomi, and so on. And that development is also expected to continue. And Apple has had some difficulties with their China operations lately. Partly because of the US-China trade war, I would guess. All right, now when we have established that the market is massive, let's look at some of the characteristics of the market, and I'll do this from the mobile games market perspective, but I think some of this will be applicable for PC and console as well. So iOS China works just the same as iOS App Store anywhere. So the store looks exactly the same, and the developer console looks the same. The only difference really is some of the regulation that came actually this year to govern the iOS store, and then of course the users, and then you have some differences on the user acquisition platforms and so on. This is a snapshot of some of the more successful Western games in Chinese iOS. I think this is about 1 or 2 months old data from Reflection. And you can see big global hits like Gardenscapes, Homescapes from Playrix. They are making around 10 million USD per month from their, according to reflection on their in-app purchases in the US market, where in China they are making close to 2 million, so one fifth roughly. In US, they are almost in the, I mean, they are well in the top 10. In China, they are in the top 50 crossing list. Angry Birds do making less than 10% of what they are making in the US market in China iOS. And but then you have games like Hearthstone that is actually making double of what they are making in the US market in China, and then Brawl Star, which is making a lot more money in China. So Brawl Star, of course, here is a little bit special case that it was just recently launched in China. They had to wait a long time to get the government approval, but nevertheless, they were able to make it to the quite top of the crossing lists. And according to reflection, during the first 2.5 months there, the IAP revenue, in-app purchase revenue, was over 45 million. So that's major revenue for any game company. And I would say that the main reason why there are so few big success cases like this in the Chinese iOS, with Western games making same amount of money or even more than what they are making in the US market, is that a lot of the developers still don't take China very seriously. They might have a localized version in the China iOS store, but typically it's just the language localization and nothing else. And they are still using the same global build and global servers, and they don't. So there are connectivity issues. The Chinese users can't connect well to the servers. They haven't tailored their live ops calendars to have the Chinese festivals and so on, and they don't do community management locally, and often they just limit their performance marketing to whatever their global platform partners are able to provide in China. So it's sort of outside of their top priorities to do China well. And I believe that if more companies were to do China properly, they would definitely have the chances to be on the top 10, top 20 of the crossing games in China. The rankings that are currently occupied by Chinese games mainly from Tencent and NetEase, who are able to perfectly tailor the experience to the local players, and also are putting in a lot of resources into their user acquisition with the local channels. Then let's look at the Android market. And this is a bit more complicated because there's not a lot of reliable data available. So whereas App Annies and Reflections and others can cover the iOS data, and also Android outside of China, inside China, they are not able to do that because Google Play is not accessible in China. And the local Chinese Android stores, they are not sharing their numbers publicly. So we are left with the download numbers, but that gives us some indication. So I have listed here some of the mainly casual games that have hit it big in China. The first three, Hill Climb Racing from series from Fingersoft in Finland, those have been distributed by us in the Android stores. And the rest are by other Chinese publishers. So you can see the biggest numbers here. Talking Tom Run, over 1 billion downloads in the Chinese Android market only, and the rest of the games getting 300 million, 600 million downloads per game. So if you, and these are pretty much mainly just organic users, by the way. But this gives you an idea of the scale, that if your game is good fit for Chinese market, then and the Android stores are helping you to promote it, then you can make it very big. A lot of the publishers are saying that they make 50% of their China revenues from Android. Some are making a little bit more, a little bit less. iOS, Android comparison. I would say in the past it was quite difficult to monetize the casual games on the Android market, because the ad monetization until quite recently was completely missing. So you couldn't monetize with advertisements at all, and in-app purchases had a lot of limitations, and I'll cover those in more detail in the following slide. But basically, the share of the revenues and the average revenue per user were quite low in the past. Now it has become better. In terms of what kind of games are successful in China, I think they have extremely wide appetite for different genres, different cultural influences. So Western games, Korean games, Japanese games, and of course Chinese games. They all have their big audiences, and the genres. I think most genres that we play here in the West also have a big audience in China, and even those that are more niche. The niche audience in China can be sizable too, because of their sheer number of users. So adapting games to the market in China doesn't necessarily mean that everything has to be culturalized. So this is one of the quite common misconceptions, that you would have to sort of completely reskin your game in order to attract the Chinese users. That is not the case. The screenshot example here is a China version of Hill Climb Racing. So we did that in a cooperation with the Fingersoft to sort of reskin the game with the Chinese teams, and more the graphic style was more targeted towards the Chinese players. And we did this after a lot of the Android platforms were recommending us that hey, the game is great, but you should do a China version of it. And so, all right, let's give it a try. But if you look at the download numbers, the original Hill Climb Racing here has got over 300 million downloads, whereas the Chinese Adventure only got 85 million. Well, only, but still. So clearly the original Hill Climb Racing, which we haven't culturalized at all, has done a lot better. And there are a lot of other examples like that in the market. Western games with their original Western gameplay and style have done extremely well. What you do need to change is integrate the regulatory requirements, which we will cover in later slides. And there are some local Android store specific requirements. So different stores have slightly different rules, and you need to accommodate those. Then you might want to optimize your game for the Chinese users' behavior. And this typically comes down to the user onboarding and the menu UIs, as well as the monetization design. So often games would benefit from, let's say, a little bit more aggressive monetization design than what we are used to doing here in the Western markets. And Chinese players tend to enjoy if they get a lot of pop-up offers from here and there. Sometimes to a degree that it for Western player, it might feel a little bit too much, like offers coming from here and there all the time. But a lot of the Chinese players actually like it. They feel that the game is a service, and if there's not enough events, offers happening in the game, they kind of start to feel that this game is dead. It's not alive. So they would, a lot of games would benefit from being much more aggressive on their content treadmill, coming up with the new content updates really frequently, and adding those live operations that bring in the special offers and events as often as they can. Then what I mentioned earlier already is that locally hosted game servers are necessary, because the internet traffic from China to overseas is sometimes blocked. So most of the games nowadays are relying on internet connections. And if it's not working, then the whole gaming experience is completely ruined. And that is a current theme when you look at the Western, basically any foreign games in the Chinese iOS App Store. You see games that have been very successful in the other markets, and then they are getting a lot of 1 or 2 star reviews from Chinese players. The easy conclusion, which is a wrong conclusion, that a lot of publishers are making, that, oh, this is not a cultural fit to Chinese market. But if you actually read those comments, majority of them is always complaining about the internet connection not working. And many of the developers are making the mistake that they have, for example, Facebook login in their game in China. The whole Facebook is blocked. So this kind of it's a small thing to fix, but can have a huge impact. But in terms of the market adaptation, I think there can be different strategies that can be successful. So some games have been successful with very little adaptation, whereas some other games require a bit more changes in order to tap their full potential. So it's always game specific, and it also ties to the overall publishing strategy, like how much resources the developer or the publisher want to put into this case, or would they be better off just focusing on majority of their resources on creating more content for the global version. So that is a sort of a business debate you need to have for each publishing case. The Android market, as I mentioned, is not done by Google Play. Google got kicked out of China when quite early on, when they refused to censor their search results. And they have made, I think, several attempts to get Google Play back to Chinese phones, but they haven't been successful with that. So instead, you have local Android app stores. When we started MyGamez in end of 2013, there were literally hundreds of local Android stores. And that was a really crazy market, to be frank. Like you had telecom operators had their own stores, then you had big internet portals, they had their Android stores, then you had device manufacturers who had their Android stores, you had some of the big publishers who had their own Android stores, then you almost had the noodle shop next door had their own Android store. So it was like just about everyone. Okay, the noodle shop was a bit of exaggeration, but there were even mobile phone retail stores. They had Android platform application stores, and there was, and there still is, no unified billing or other services across these stores. So every single store has their own SDK that you need to integrate to the game. So you can imagine that back then it was a total nightmare for the developer. And there were some of the bigger publishers who actually they were catering as many stores as possible, and who had like 150 different versions of a game, one for each store. So it was like back to the terrible Java games days when developers had to keep and maintain all these different operator versions. Now it has consolidated a lot, luckily, and the top 6 Android stores are now roughly, I would estimate, covering 90% of the users. So it's a lot better already. A few years back, we were still covering 60 different app stores at MyGamez. So any single game we published, it would automatically go to 60 different Android stores. And like I mentioned earlier, you have a wide range of different user segments here. The Android stores they have some differences in terms of their audiences. So some are more popular among the hardcore gamers, some are more popular among the young, and some among the students. But the differences are not huge in general. And you have to basically, when you publish in Chinese Android stores, you have to take into account in monetization, especially that you are catering to the really wide range of income levels. So in the Chinese iOS, most of the players are within quite comfortable income levels to consume. So you don't have to target so many segments there. But on the Android market, if you really want to have your game played and monetized with the widest possible audience, then you need to take that into account. So here are the current top Android stores. So on the left you have Tencent's Yingyongbao My App Store, which it used to be absolutely the biggest store when we started 6 years ago, but it's not the biggest anymore in terms of number of users, at least. But instead, we had these handset manufacturers, handset brands growing. So Oppo, Vivo, Huawei, Xiaomi, they are all handset manufacturers who managed to build a strong user loyalty for their smartphone brands, and then managed to push their own app stores there. Then TapTap is not among the biggest one in terms of users, but they are sort of a special case in terms of their customer loyalty. They are like a store where a lot of the hardcore gamers go, and they have really active engagement with the store. But basically, at the moment, covering these six marketplaces, you would be already pretty comfortable in terms of the Android users. Then there is outside of the app stores, you can do direct distribution, which means paid user acquisition. I'll go that to in the next slide. But before that, I excuse myself and pour a little bit of coffee. All right. Oh, typo. It should be huge numbers sliced thin. And we are talking about the revenue share models here. So in the Apple App Store, the platform fee, at least until now, has been 30% for Apple and 70% for the developer, and Google Play has had the same. But in the Chinese Android market, the standard model is that the App Store first takes 5% for their sort of billing, so their SDK that covers the monetization. And then from the remaining, they take 50% for the audience. Sort of, they give you the audience. They have hundreds of millions of users. So by being in their stores, you are getting access to that audience. And you might also get some featuring. So they cut 50% for that. And then since as a Western developer, you would need to have a local Chinese publisher, the standard revenue share between publishers and developers is 50-50. So another 50% from the remainder is gone there. So what is left is 23.75% of the total games revenue. So that is significantly smaller than the 70% that you are getting from iOS. And on top of that, then the Android users' average spending compared to iOS user is much lower because you have so many low income players there as well. So you really do need to get hundreds of millions of downloads to make a good revenues there. But then there is the direct traffic option. So during the past few years, user acquisition platforms in China have been growing a lot. The whole business of buying users with performance marketing has really boomed on the Android side. And you can now basically skip these Android stores platform fees by buying users from user acquisition providers like Tencent ads or ByteDance ads or other Baidu ads, and then direct them to download not the Oppo, Vivo, Tencent or Huawei store version, but a separate version of the game with your own billing. And so by using a private billing solution, you are just paying a small cut to the billing provider, like WeChat Payment or Alipay, and then the rest is yours. So you can get up to over 90% of the revenue share with that method. So that's a really attractive model for studios who are scaling with performance marketing, who have high enough LTV to do profitable user acquisition. And the growth of ByteDance, so the ByteDance was the parent company of TikTok. So they have multiple very successful applications in Chinese market. Xinru Toutiao is their news aggregation app, and then Douyin is the video app. Then they have several other video ads. They also have traffic across other third-party apps with their ad monetization platform. So they, together with Tencent Ads, they have really been able to disrupt the market a lot by enabling this efficient direct traffic. And this will be interesting to see how the Android marketplaces will respond to that in the long run. But at the moment, if developer is getting 20% or 40% of the total revenue from the Android store, it really doesn't make sense to drive paid user to those stores. But if one thing is constant in the Chinese mobile games market, that is the change. So things are changing all the time. The market shares of the platforms are changing. The big new ones coming, and old ones falling, and different business models coming up. So everything is really in a fast-paced, constant change. So we'll just have to embrace ourselves and see what's coming next. The Android stores are pretty much operating as a walled garden mindset. So they want to build their own ecosystem. And since there are so many competing app stores, they are very jealous about their traffic. They're their own users are the most valuable thing for them, that they will definitely not want to lose. And although a lot of the Chinese Android players are using multiple Android stores at the same time, so they might have their handset manufacturer store, and then on top of that, they would have Tencent store or TapTap store or something else. Still, the all the app stores are really fighting for the users, and that's why they are controlling everything. So payments, all the payments come from their platform SDK. So they all have a slightly different mix of different payment solutions. For example, Tencent App Store is only using Tencent's own payment methods like WeChat payment or QQ Coin, whereas then Oppo Store would have probably WeChat and Alipay. They wouldn't have QQ coins. They might have a couple of other payment interfaces integrated. So they all build their own mix based on what's best for their business. And ad monetization, most of the stores prefer to control that as well. So you can't use any third-party ad SDKs, but instead all the advertisements must come from the store SDK. And this basically means that the competition is smaller on the ad providing, and the eCPMs, the revenue that you can get from your in-game advertisements is smaller than in the free market. They prohibit all the external links to the game. So they are afraid that any link to external service would enable publishers to steal away the user, and they go as far as even prohibiting you to link your privacy policy on your website. So it's completely zero links. Also, no third-party accounts. So you can already, because Facebook is blocked in China, you can't use Facebook logins. But then you would think, okay, well, there's over 1 billion WeChat users. Can we use WeChat logins in our game? Nope, you can't. I mean, on the iOS version, yes, but on the Android stores, you can only do the logins with the store's own account system. Cross promotion also, if you have multiple games, you can't cross promote them outside of the store. So you need to build a system that if it's, for example, Tencent user and you want to promote them your other game, it has to, the download link has to bring them back to Tencent store to get it. And like I mentioned, the user acquisition, because of the revenue share model, it really doesn't make sense to buy user from external platform and get them to download the game from one of these stores, because you are only the publisher is only getting less than 50% of the revenue. The stores do then give you featuring. So that is sort of the free way of getting the users. But they give the featuring pretty much based on the game's performance. So if the game is not making a lot of money, and if it's not retaining users well, they will not feature it for long. But if you manage to serve their players well, the game has good KPIs, then the stores will will typically give you featuring, and you can keep that growth. So that's sort of the dynamics there on how to get the users. And then, of course, there are other ways you can do on the marketing, like you can use influencers, you can use your own social media marketing, etc. All right, now we established that the market is huge and there's a lot of money to be made, and then we realized that's actually quite complicated market. And now, as we are going into the regulation part, you will realize that it's even more complicated. But I hope you won't be completely disheartened by the apparent complexity of the regulation. Okay, so let's start from the censorship. So China has the one-party system with the Chinese Communist Party, basically governing the whole country, and they have built this culture of quite strong censorship in governing all the media that is capable of reaching wide audiences. So be it book publishing, television, radio, movies, you name it. Anything that is sort of single point to many distribution of information is subject to censorship. And they are mainly looking at topics on historical, political, cultural, and moral aspects. And the way this is implemented, this is my own overly simplified explanation, but basically you have government bureaus who are setting the line where the government actually is the wrong word here. The censorship belongs directly under the party apparatus, but party in a way is the same as the government. But they are drawing the line that what should be censored and what can go live. And then they are also tracking all the traffic, all the media, and making sure that the censorship is implemented. Then you have these trusted companies that, for example, book publishing or TV publishing companies, they are typically very large companies. Often they have a state ownership on the background or in the history, and they are entrusted with the publishing license that enables them to basically publish content by applying self-censorship. So they are the filters who themselves check what can go live and what not, what should be censored. And then on the bottom line, you have these smaller businesses self-censorship, and the key thing there is the business license. So if you're a small business owner and you would publish something that is against the rules, then you are basically risking of losing your business licenses. Or so it's very much relying on self-censorship, the party setting the tone and the line, the guidelines, and then companies taking the action to follow them, making sure that they follow it. And this is now very much in the reason why. I mean, one of the reasons, at least, why the Western or the foreign companies are not welcome to do content business in China so openly by themselves. They always need to work with the local partner. Is that I think the government wants to make sure that whoever is publishing content understands these censorship rules, and it would be difficult for them to control foreign companies if they had direct access to the market. Then the overseas content is censored with the Great Firewall. So China is cut off from the World Wide Web, not completely, but partially. So there are a lot of services and websites that are completely inaccessible in China. So all the social media, Facebook, Twitter, search engines. I think Microsoft's Bing is probably the only major search engine that is not blocked in China. I think they have probably a local version that is censoring the search results. Then you have all the content streaming platforms, a lot of the big media, news websites, things like Wikipedia. Then a lot of also like professional tools. Slack, Dropbox, Google's services are blocked. These can still be accessed in China with the VPN. Well, technically the private use of VPN services is also not allowed, but a lot of people still find ways to get access to VPN service. And with those, they will be able to access these overseas services. But it's definitely a small portion of the population who uses the VPNs and who is using the overseas services. There's also the language barrier there. Most of the Chinese don't speak that much English, so they would have a hard time using those services anyways. Then let's look at the government organizations that are governing the game industry. So the most important right now is the National Administration of Press and Publication, and they are under the Communist Party Publicity Department. So they are basically the one who is really carefully checking all the game content before it's published. Then you have the Ministry of Information Industry and Technology, and they are a party who is giving the companies the ICP license, that is the minimum requirement for publishing games in China. And there's an important detail here is that only 100% Chinese-owned company can acquire the ICP license. So if you are a subsidiary of a foreign company, wholly foreign-owned company, or even a joint Sino-foreign joint venture, you can't get the ICP license. So that's the core reason why a Chinese publisher is needed. Then there is the Cyberspace Administration, who is overall looking at the internet and privacy policies and so on. And then Ministry of Culture. Ministry of Culture, recently they haven't been so important anymore on the games industry.
Roughly 10 minutes left.
Then we have the most important piece of paper, ISBN. So any game who wants to be published in China must obtain ISBN first. And this is sort of publication number. So it's a game specific. Every single game needs to get their own ISBN number. And this can only be applied by a licensed Chinese publishing entity. And then you need to get it before you publish. There are different categories for mobile, console, and PC ISBN. You can also apply, if you have a cross-platform game, you can apply for all of them. And they have different category for domestic and foreign games. And unfortunately, to foreign games, there are recently quite strict quotas on how many games can get the ISBN. They are not public what are the numbers, but basically domestic games are getting a lot more ISBN approvals than foreign games. And this year has been very, very tight. We have so far had only 55 foreign games in all three categories combined getting the ISBN approval. Whereas domestic games, there are every month around 100 games are getting the approvals. So definitely the Chinese developed games are having a bit of an advantage there in getting the market now. This ISBN used to be a requirement only for sort of online, like a MMORPG type of games, and then PC online games in the past. But then in the end of 2016, they made changes to the regulation to cover all the games have to get this now. So the time to market has now significantly slowed. There is basically two entities in the ISBN application. One is the game publisher, who has to be one of these companies who has the the publishing service license that I mentioned earlier, who can do the self-censorship. And then there are game operator who is the entity who is actually distributing and operating the game. This can be the one and the same company, but only a handful of the biggest publishers like Tencent or NetEase, etc., have the game publisher license. The smaller companies need to work with sort of government-appointed agencies who have these license. And then it's the National Administration of Press and Publication who gives the ISBN after the application process. And this is how the process looks like. So in the first stage, there's a preparation. The developer needs to prepare an APK version of the game. Even if you only plan to publish on iOS, you still need to prepare the Android APK to submit with your application. And it has to be 100% compliant with the regulations. And then there needs to be a very extensive documentation on the game content and lots of application paperwork. Then once the materials are ready, you submit it to the agency, and there is game is reviewed very carefully by the agent. If they find anything that is against the rules, they will bounce it back to you and tell you to make changes. And then there's the game Chinese name registration with the Copyright Bureau. Once that is passed, then the game is submitted to the provincial ISBN Bureau, and they will review the game content again. And if they find anything that is against the regulation, in their opinion, they will send back a change request. And the developer will then have 20 days time to make the changes and resubmit the game. Once you pass the provincial bureau's check, then it goes to Beijing, to the central bureau for the final review and decision. And again, if they find anything that they don't like, then they will give you 20 days to fix it. And then hopefully in the end, you will get approval and a piece of paper with the stamp. And then you have a green light to publish on all the platforms. And in 2017, when this was all fresh and new, the timeline for domestic games was about 1 month and foreign games 3 months to go through the whole process. But now they have lengthened it, and the whole process takes over 12 months at the moment for the foreign games. Domestic games is slightly faster. Some of them can get it in 6 months, some 9 months. But definitely, if you want to get your game to China, you need to start very early on. But the thing here is that you can only start your application when you have the game ready. So technically, it doesn't have to be the final launch version, but it has to look ready. You need to have the monetization, etc. there. So what are the requirements for the content? So there is the censorship part, and then the healthy gaming aspect of it. So on the censorship, all the violence, horror, and erotic content is banned. For example, what is quite popular in a lot of the East Asian anime-style games are big female body parts that need to be shrunk to be more realistic proportions. Then any blood in the game is strictly forbidden. Any liquid that could be mistaken to blood has to be changed to some other color, but red. And then any content that is too scary, for example, has to be modified to a little bit less scarier. For example, even if you have very cartoon style graphics, it might still be that your monsters are a little bit too aggressive looking, and you have to sort of adjust the graphics a little bit. Political content, definitely no go. So no Taiwanese flags or no comparison of countries in the gameplay. No external links. Everything has to be 100% simplified Chinese. So even if you have something like XP there in your graphics, you have to change that into Chinese. Those are all easy, but then the difficult part comes from the healthy gaming, anti-addiction. So this year, this is quite recent, they started requiring the game time and payment limitations for underage players. There's also limitations on gacha monetization. For example, you have to show the percentage of each item, your chances of winning it, and so on. But the game time and payment limitation is really a biggie one. So you need to have players to log in with their real ID, their social security number, or what do you call that, and their real name. And then there are government provided APIs where you can check that this is actually a real ID, real person matching the name, and then you check the age of the player, and then based on their age, you need to apply these restrictions. So under 8-year-old can't buy anything, and then for tiers after that, you have these maximum for single payment as well as monthly accumulated maximum. And then playtime limitations, again, under 18. So I guess this is if you are expected to be in school, you are not supposed to play during the nighttime. So from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. And you can only play up to 90 minutes per day. And this is currently per game, but there might be something coming up in the future that they would sort of build a bigger platform that would combine all the games under this 90 minutes curfew. And then weekends you can play a little bit more. And this is a rather new thing. It was introduced in the Android market, I think very end of last year, or beginning of this year. And then on the iOS, this became the requirement in July. And publishers have just been really busy on implementing the requirements. And I think no one has yet had much time to think like, okay, how will this impact the user experience, and how we have to maybe redesign the gameplay sessions to accommodate these limitations and make sure that our players will get most out of it, and we can still monetize them. If we have time,
Mikael, I think the time is almost up, so I guess we have to wrap it up for Q&A soon.
All right. Should we start from these questions that you sent earlier?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. There's also quite a lot of questions that came from the chat. So how about you go with the first one on this slide, and then I will bring you up something from the chat. We go back.
Okay, cool. So the PC gaming market compared to the mobile one. So mobile is definitely really the biggest market. Everyone is mobile first. People are using mobile for everything, and a lot of families don't have PC for recreational purposes. They might have their work laptop, but no gaming PCs. So it's much smaller. There was a strong history of these internet cafes where people who don't have PC would go into this big hall full of PCs and play these online games, and they would just pay the cafe owner for that. Those still exist in some areas, but in a bigger cities, not that strong anymore. But you still do have a sizable market there. Steam is actually available in China, although it shouldn't by the regulation. And Chinese are using Steam a lot, so there are actually foreign games that are making fairly good money from Steam China. There has been several times it has been blocked on and off, so users needed to use VPN to access it. I don't follow it that closely whether it's now blocked or open, but people are using it. Tencent has their own PC game platform called V-Game. I think that's around 2 years old now. that hasn't gotten that much users because strangely that one is then governed. So all the games in Tencent platform needs to get the ISBN first, so they have a lot less content. But then the Steam that is not regulated, you can basically just publish your game Chinese language version there without any approvals. So if you do have a game on Steam, just go for the China market, and you can maybe see if you can find a partner to do the marketing, or just trust on your luck.
Wow, that's a good tip. Okay, I have a question that came from the chat. Blake Gumman actually asked, what's the most problematic regulation to publish game to China? And what are the consequences or consensus to breaking them? In that sense, I also want to ask this one more follow-up question. How early in the production that you would recommend for game companies to take Chinese publishing and their regulations into considerations of their development?
I would start by saying that China market is definitely not for everyone. So only plan to go China if you're really confident that your game has a good chances of succeeding there. It is the most competed market in the world, and there are really, really good games there by local publishers who are able to serve the local players super well. So only if you have a really good game and you also have the resources to also focus on China, because you need to do it well then if you want to succeed. Having said that, then I think as early as possible in your design process, if you can take these regulatory requirements into your game design, that can help a lot. So then your game can be sort of China regulation compliant from the day one, or at least you can build it in a way that making those changes won't break the whole thing. Because some games, if you just build it for the Western market, global market first, and then you start to consider China, then implementing some of these changes might be quite big. And then, like, the most problematic, I feel at the moment, the single detail is definitely the age checking and those limitations. So, for example, well, on the Android side, the Android stores are providing the API for confirming the ID number. But on the iOS side, Apple is not doing that. So the publishers need to find a third-party solution that are not free. They actually have a rather high cost. So that's a problem there. And then implementing that strict limitations. If your audience is mainly adults, then it doesn't matter too much. But if you are catering to the underage audience, then you probably would be best to take those into consideration already when you design your gameplay, the session lengths, and the monetization. But the biggest problem is definitely the slowness of this getting the ISBN. It's taking 1 year or sometimes even longer to get the approval is terrible, and then the small quotas for foreign games.
I will then next move on to the next question. I can just read it to you. That's not currently on your slide. And the question is, what are the key differences between console game publishing in China compared to elsewhere? Is it worth the trouble at all?
So console is an interesting thing. They used to be completely banned in China, and I can't remember which year they opened it. So now there are consoles being sold in China, but it's regulated. So those console games need to get the ISBN. So it's a really small, but what a lot of Chinese console users are doing is that they are buying their consoles from Japan or Korea, so that they can get the global version, and then they will use VPN to access the games there. So probably the best tactic would be to make make sure your game version there has a simplified Chinese language support, and then you would have your Chinese audience without you knowing it.
Right. And the next question I will dedicate it to, the question came from the chat. You previously mentioned that go to Chinese market if you're confident enough. It's quite a competitive market. If so, then Tumpy123 have asked, how can you tell if your game or product will be suitable for the Chinese market? What are the best channels to market your game if that's such a case?
That's a good question, and I think there's a lot of ways to answer that. Depending on the publisher, I would say different publishers probably have different answers to this. My answer would be that first, if the game doesn't succeed in Western markets, it probably won't do well in China either. So don't try to take something that is already broken into China and hope that it will work there. So prove your KPIs in your home markets first. When you are in a soft launch, if it seems like, okay, well, my KPIs are really strong, I believe in this game, we can scale this up, then start to think about China, and then first and easiest step would be to engage with different publishers to get their opinion on the game, and I think a lot of them would be very willing to give their like reasoning why or why not the game is a good fit for China. Then you can also look at the resources like App Annie, Reflection. What are those? Game Refinery has some really good reports about the Chinese iOS market, different genres. You can learn what type of games are popular there and see how your game fits there. And then for us, what we do is that if we evaluate the game ourselves first, and if we think, well, this should be suitable for China market, then we will also show it to the platforms. So we discuss it with the Android stores and get their feedback. So then we can come up with a pretty solid evaluation. And was there a second part to this question?
Yeah, well, there actually were related questions coming to that. Also kind of asking about, if that's the case, then what do you think from the game business perspective? Would it be beneficial to have an in-house business person with Chinese language or citizenship background? Would that be beneficial for this type of early stage considerations going to a Chinese market?
Maybe some of the bigger publishers could benefit from that.
But does it also applies for smaller companies? What do you think?
I think for smaller developers, China is sort of there are so many question marks whether China is a good fit for them or not.
Right. So it's quite highly competitive for smaller or indie developers to enter.
Okay. So if there is a smaller developer who has a lot of confidence in their game and they really want to do China, Then yes, there's business development exercise you need to do your homework to understand how the market works, engage with the different publishers, choose the best publisher, and so on. So maybe being able to speak Chinese and perhaps even have some networks down in China that can be helpful.
I'll also move on to the third question that's currently in your slide. So it's kind of going back to the cost-wise, and I think this is related to fees and revenue shares. What is the average cost for publishing an indie game in China? We kind of discussed about like iOS and App Store revenue shares before, but does that also apply to indie games and let's say Steam, for example? You just mentioned that Steam is available in China. So for example, how much money can a developer expect to get from every 10 euro game sold in China? So compared to iOS, Android, maybe also Steam?
So Steam would be just the global version. So that's basically, I don't play Steam games myself, so I don't even know what kind of revenue model they have.
But so you're saying it's quite standard, global standard applied for Steam in China as well.
Yeah, because the Chinese are using their VPN access to use the global version. There is, by the way, a Chinese company called Perfect World, who is apparently in cooperation with Valve developing a Chinese version of Steam.
Yes, yeah, I remember that. Yes. Okay.
So once that is ready, if it ever comes, then it might be that the government will finally block the global version access. But yeah, for the mobile platforms, yeah, that's the revenue shares are just the same standard as with the platforms that I showed in an earlier slide. But then the publisher, the revenue share with your Chinese publisher, that is then subject to negotiation. So there are different cooperation models. Like we at MyGamez, we are mainly targeting our service to larger publishers who want to do China sort of as a self-publishing model. So we give them access to do China by themselves, so to say, and then we take a lot smaller revenue share for our services. Whereas majority of the Chinese publishers, they actually prefer a model where they will take the game source code, they will modify it and distribute, operate it, sort of take care of everything in China. And on that kind of model, they, of course, the publisher will want as big revenue share as they can get. But I think 50-50 between publisher and developer is pretty standard. For that model where you give your game source code to the Chinese publisher, then typically there would be a license fee upfront or minimum revenue guarantee upfront. So if I was an indie game developer for mobile, I would probably seek for that kind of model, that I find a publisher that is sort of aligned with my goals and see if there's a minimum guarantee or other that we can get.
Yeah. I mean, each country has very different environment, different game ecosystem, and definitely China as well. And due to time limit, so I think we have to wrap up today's lecture now. So that was the last question. There were a lot of unanswered questions. I also kind of apologize to a lot of our students. So hopefully this will be a starting point for us to learn more about the Chinese market and also different perspective of gaming ecosystem out there in the world. So due to time limits, let's give a big virtual applause to Mikael for giving us this lecture today.
Thank you.
That Twitch can able to play the applause animation on your side. Well, thank you very much. And thank you everyone for joining today as well.